Guys, it's Karen. I wanted to come and talk to you about the horrible bug that is going around the UK in dogs at the moment. And Watson has unfortunately had this and is currently recovering. So I thought I'd give you an update on Watson as well, because I know that some of you will have seen what's been going on Instagram. But I've seen so much at the different vets I've been at, because I've been to my local vet and I've also he's been in hospital, so I've been to the vet hospital and spoken to people there, spoken to people in the waiting room, spoken to the different vets, and it's so rife at the moment in Scotland. It started in north of England, I think, like in Newcastle area, and is now up in Scotland. And the problem with it is that you need to catch it really quickly in order for it not to be too severe. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to Watson and where he's at just now, and then hopefully you can be aware of the symptoms, and then I'll tell you what I've seen and heard in the vets waiting rooms. So Watson, last Thursday, we were off last week. Kev was off work and we were having a kind of staycation, going for days out and whatnot, and we were having a lovely week. And Thursday Watson was absolutely fine right up to bedtime. So probably about 9 o'clock he was still looking for treats, and we maybe gave him something, and like I said, he was absolutely fine. He went to bed no problem. In the middle of Thursday night I woke up and woke my husband up and said, Watson's crying, because I could hear him kind of going like that. And so we went out into the hall where he was on his cool mat, and as soon as I sort of bent down and was stroking him, he stopped and sort of looked at me, and I couldn't see any reason for him crying. He was just lying there. He wasn't like moving about, because normally if he'd be moving about and uncomfortable we'd have heard him. And so we assumed it was a bad dream, and my husband actually thought it might have just been a funny kind of breathing thing, but I assumed it was he'd been having some kind of bad dream or something like that. And there wasn't anything else we could do really, and he'd stopped, like I said, when I got up. So I went back to bed. Got up on Friday morning, as always. Kev took him for a walk, and on his walk he was sick. And there wasn't really much to the sick. It was just kind of white foam. That's what it looked like. There was nothing in it. You know, he didn't have his breakfast. He normally has that after his first walk. So there was nothing to be thrown up really. He came back and wouldn't eat his breakfast, and he wouldn't take his pork, which is more unusual. So he gets tablets in the morning. He's always on some kind of tablets. And I give him them in a piece of pork loin wrapped up, and he wouldn't take that. Sometimes he is a fussy eater, so sometimes he's off his breakfast, but he'll take a piece of pork, but he wouldn't take anything at all. And he went and lay down. My husband was going out and taking him to his parents, and I can't remember what I was doing on Friday, but my husband was taking Watson out. His plan was to pop in on his parents and do a few things, and there's a nice walk nearby. So he took him to his parents, but he still hadn't eaten at this point, and his parents were having corned beef sandwiches, and Watson looked very interested, but when he was offered a little bit wouldn't eat it. Then Kev tried to take him for a walk, and he just wouldn't move away from the car. He just sat there as if to say, I don't want to go for a walk. So we brought him home. On the way home, Watson was sick again in the car twice actually, and again it was just kind of white foam. He got home and drank loads of water. So by now it's kind of mid-afternoon. He got home and drank loads of water, and then immediately threw that water up. Now I had an appointment on Friday at 5 o'clock at the vet's to have Watson's vaccines, but since him throwing up in the morning, I had phoned them and said, just to let you know, he's not eating and he's throwing up, and I know there's this bug going on, so I will be asking about that when we come in. If we've only got time for that, fair enough, we'll do the vaccines another time, and they might not want to do the vaccines if he's sick anyway. So we knew at 5 o'clock we had the vet, and this was kind of mid-afternoon. So he then threw up. He threw up in total about 8 times, and on time number 8 it was blood. And it was just pure blood. It was just pure red blood. It almost looked like it had little grains in it, because my husband didn't think it was blood. He said, I think that's some kind of treat or something from a few days ago or something. He said, I don't think that's blood, because like I said, it looked like it had tiny, you know, like when you split a tea bag, that's what it looked like. So that was really quite frightening. We set off for the vets. At this point, he hadn't had a poop all day long. And so we couldn't say that he hadn't had diarrhea. You know, he'd been absolutely fine in that respect. I think he might have had a small one in the morning, but it was fine. So I took him to the vets. I asked if they could see him earlier. Once he threw up the blood, I phoned them, and it was, you know, I said, if I come now, will you see us earlier? But they were absolutely mobbed with people. Normally they can fit you in earlier, but they were so busy. On the way to the vets, so I parked the car, got out of the car and walked to the vets. On the way to the vets, he had diarrhea that was just pure blood. And so I was quite panicked by the time I got there. I was so thankful that when I was in the waiting room, there was another lady that was due to go before me, but it's a very small practice that I go to, and the girl behind the reception said she'd never seen Watson like that. She said he normally pulls me into the surgery. He normally goes immediately and says hello to one of the two receptionists and gets a treat and says, you know, gives them kisses. That he just wasn't, he wouldn't move. He just, you know, could barely walk. It was really difficult for me to get him actually to the surgery because he didn't really want to walk. And so she asked the lady that was waiting if she wouldn't mind if I went in first. So we went in first to see the lovely David. David did all the tests on him. He was checking his scruff and whatnot, and he said he is dehydrated, severely dehydrated, and this is hemorrhagic gastroenteritis. Gastroenteritis just means a bug. I've been diagnosed with that before. Hemorrhagic means that he's now damaged the stomach lining and he's throwing up and pooping out his stomach lining. Not very much of it, obviously, but he also said he's got an ulcer already on his stomach. I guess that was just from feeling it. And he noticed he was in pain. The receptionist had noticed that as well. She said that you can see the way he's sitting. He kind of had his back hunched, and so his tummy was painful. So I knew that was then obviously what was happening the night before. He'd obviously started getting a sore tummy and he was crying. So the vet told me that he needed to go into hospital. I cried my eyes out, phoned my husband and said, you know, you'll need to come and meet me here and take him, because it was quite a way across town, because our vet doesn't do they don't have a 24-hour service basically. So we needed to go to the emergency vets. And we were told, that was on Friday, we were told that we needed to go after 6. It was only 5 then, so it would take an hour to get across there anyway, and that we wouldn't get him back before Monday. This is terrifying to us because we've never left Watson. Watson has been away from us for one night, and that was when he was a small puppy, so he was maybe 4 or 5 months old. All we could hope for was that, you know, he would be too ill to notice or too knocked out on drugs to notice, although actually I asked them for the breakdown of the invoice and I don't see any pain relief on there at all, which kind of annoys me, but it's done now and I need to concentrate on him getting better. And it doesn't mean that they didn't give him any, because I know that he got some before he left our local vet. He gave him an anti-sickness injection and he said it's got a pain relief in it, but he thought they would give him opioids when he got to the emergency place. We got to the emergency place, and I say my husband took him and I drove home, because I just felt like I was so upset it wouldn't do Watson any good. Me being there that upset, it would pass it on to him, you know, make him anxious. I didn't want that to happen. My husband's a lot calmer than me. My husband had to wait a couple of hours before getting checked in at this other hospital. And what we've since found out is that actually they were full. And so we were lucky. We were apparently the last patient there, and everybody else had to go to Fife. So this is in Edinburgh. So that was Friday. We were told we would get a call after lunchtime on Saturday to tell us how he was doing. We waited and waited and waited and no call, and it got to about 3:30. Sorry, that was what's moving about. I'm listening for him because obviously he's not with the walker this week. I waited for the call, nothing came, and at 3:30 I texted my husband, who'd gone to golf. We decided he'd still go to golf because we just needed to keep ourselves busy, and I was going to paint my spare room, the vanity room, and we phoned them and they said that he had settled in well. He'd had no diarrhea, no bleeding, no vomiting on the Saturday at all. I don't know whether he had any overnight, but that he wouldn't eat anything, and they said it could be because he's he's away from you. And so what they said is to phone back at 7 o'clock and see how things were then, and if he'd still had no diarrhea and no vomiting, we were to go in and maybe see if he would take food from us, and we did. We phoned him at 7, we phoned them at 7. Well, they said between 7 and 8, and of course we phoned at 7 o'clock on the dot, and they weren't ready to give us an update, so they phoned us back about 15:15 and said, you can come in and you can have him out on trial. And if he eats while he's with you, then you can keep him at home. So we went and got him. It was just amazing to get him home. So we had him home Saturday night. We didn't get home until, I don't know, 9:30, something like that. And as soon as he came in, I was offering him all sorts of things, as you can imagine, and he did eat. So we were delighted, and we thought, right, okay, that's him recovering, that's him at home. That was Saturday night. Yesterday, he ate a little bit more. He's not eating his normal food, he's on raw food because of his colitis, but he's eating a little bit of wet food, a little bit of kibble, little bits here and there, staying hydrated, which is good. And then we had the vet this morning, today being Monday, to just check that everything was okay, and he's actually was booked in to be admitted for the day, because it's a kind of complicated system. But because our vets don't have a 24-hour surgery, what we would have had to do if he was in till Monday was go to the emergency vet, pick him up and drive him to our local vet for the day, and then at the end of the day pick him up and drive him back to this emergency vet. So I'm glad we didn't have to go through all that rigmarole. He didn't want to walk much yesterday. He had a little half an hour walk at lunchtime. He didn't want to walk in the morning. He didn't want to walk in the evening. So he's definitely, in recovery. But still no throwing up, still no upset bum. In fact, this morning we had a lovely firm poo. Sorry if that's TMI, but it's really important, and that was a really good sign. So I took him to the vet this morning. The vet checked everything. His heartbeat was back to normal, because the heartbeat can get really irregular from this. His temperature was fine. That was back to normal. He was rehydrated all right, because he'd been on a drip at the hospital. He's on antibiotics now. He's on metronidazole, which is a really strong antibiotic, twice a day for the next 3 days. So today, tomorrow and Wednesday. So that'll be not quite a week, probably 5 days. And he's also on omeprazole, which is just to, stop him feeling sick and to help his stomach, protect his stomach. So that's really it with Watson. He's definitely recovering. He wanted a little walk after we got back from the vets. So we were only out for 10-15 minutes, and he's sleeping now. So I'll see how long he sleeps for, and then I'll offer to take him for a walk. I show him his harness and see if he comes and noses it and wags his tail, kind of thing. And we'll go for a walk for as long as he wants to, and take it from there. But what I saw in the vets and spoke to people about was that basically at the vet this morning, there were 3 other dogs that had this bug. And I was the only one that left today with Watson. Each of the other 3 dogs were admitted again today. So they all have to do the same thing, because we're all with the same vet and they don't have this 24-hour. They all had to go and collect their dog from the emergency hospital and bring them down to the local vet to get admitted for the day, and then they'll have to transport them back if they're no better. And you could see they were holding their dogs, and the dogs were just in an awful state. And the problem is that people are thinking it may be just a bug that will pass, but this comes on so quickly, so suddenly and so severely that it can really start shutting systems down. It can affect their liver, it can affect their heart, it can affect so many things, that if there is any signs of this, I would say normally, if a dog just has diarrhea or isn't eating or whatnot, you could wait and see if it passed, because they might have eaten something. But at the moment, there's so many dogs with this horrible virus, it's a bacterial infection that's causing so much damage, that I would say if they're not eating, if they don't see themselves, if they've got any of the signs, vomiting or diarrhea, get them straight to the vet. One of the little dogs, there was a little Labradoodle in the reception, and she had bloody diarrhea and wasn't eating, but she hadn't vomited. So that's why I'm saying they don't have to have all of those symptoms. She hadn't vomited at all, but she wouldn't eat a thing, and she hasn't eaten since last Thursday. At least Watson is now eating. So she was getting readmitted. Another one had vomited blood, but didn't have diarrhea. Another one had both, seemed to get better, but then suddenly went downhill again, which I've read from. I'll link you the 2 articles on this horrible bug that's going about, so you can read a bit more about it. So there's varying degrees of it, and some people have been lucky and their dogs haven't actually had to be admitted. I think we've been really lucky, if you can say that Watson was only admitted he was only there overnight, and he was only there 24 hours really, and we were expecting him to be there until the Monday, but we only had to spend 1 night away from him. Neither of us slept a blooming wink. Is there anything else I need to tell you? I'm just trying to think of everything. while we were at the emergency vets, there were 3 phone calls with dogs that had the same thing, exactly the same thing. So it's literally just spreading like wildfire. It spreads from the dogs. They might sniff the grass, and it might be where a dog's pooped. They might sniff another dog's bum, lick another dog, all of that kind of thing. That's how it's spreading. Yeah, I think that's all there is to tell you. So I would just, like I said, if there's any of those symptoms at the moment, get your dog immediately to the vet so that they can get the treatment that they need. And you might even get away with not having to admit them. Try and help them to drink water. Put loads of water where they can drink it. That will help. But Watson was drinking loads of water on Friday, and it obviously wasn't enough to keep him hydrated after all of the fluids he lost. Yeah, that's everything. I hope that this disappears quickly, because it was no fun seeing all these dogs very poorly and hearing about them. And I'm on Labradoodle sites, and there's a lot of people on there saying, yep, my dog's got this, my dog's got this, my dog's going through this. And like I said, there are so many varying degrees. Some are really, really sick, others have got away without being admitted, but it all is down to catching it really quickly and getting it treated really, really quickly. So I hope that this was useful. Thank you for everybody's wishes about Watson, and wishing for him to get better, and your words of comfort. It was just horrendous. Friday was horrendous, Saturday was horrendous, and I'm so delighted to have him home. I'm feeling a bit down about his health in general for him, because I just feel like he's been through so much. It's like, how's he now also got this? It's like, when will it end? But I'm sure I'll pick myself up for his sake. And it was lovely, because we were off last week on holiday, like I said, and we had a couple of days where I thought, yeah, we're finally getting on top of his health. He's just turned 5 and he's had so many health problems, but we've recently stopped one of his allergy drugs, and he seems to be enjoying life more. You'll see the videos on Instagram where he was digging away to try and find an animal, and then he was burying himself in the sand on the beach, and he just seemed like he had a bit of zest for life that I haven't seen in a long time, or I don't see very much. And then now he's got this, so I'm looking forward to seeing that zest for life again. So yeah, I hope this was useful. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.